Well, listening to that is Assistant Police Commissioner Richard Chambers, who joins us now with the latest. Good evening. Is people, trotting off to the islands for a day trip, is that a problem?
Oh, good afternoon, Lisa. Well, look, we totally understand the situation that Waiheke is voicing its concerns. Look, many communities have voiced their concerns, and our job is to work with the rules within Alert Level 3, and Waiheke Island is within Alert Level 3 as well. So police will continue to do the best job that we can, given what is a very challenging situation for everyone.
So are you going to put a checkpoint at the ferry terminal?
Look, our plea to everybody is that I think everybody understands what's expected, and as has been said, the vast majority of people are doing the right thing. There are a few that don't seem to understand or are ignoring those, and where we can, we have a conversation with them. But we continue to say to please, avoid unnecessary travel. People need to understand that there's The reason we're all doing this is for the greater good of all communities across Auckland and ultimately for our country. So if people are unsure about what those expectations are, then they need to have a look at the government COVID-19 website.
But you think the majority do know what's expected of them, and clearly some people think that the rules don't apply to them, and a number of them are going off on to a Waiheke Island and goodness knows where else. So is that something you need to look at? Will you have a chat to Fuller's Ferries about some way of checking that people are getting on the ferry are residents on the island?
Well, if we are getting calls coming into our 105 number, we will be following those up. And if they relate to Waiheke events on Waiheke Island, then it may be that my colleagues on the island will need to speak to Fuller's. But at this stage, I think we've heard that the amount of traffic that has been finding its way to Waiheke on the ferry is significantly reduced, which says that the majority are doing the right thing. A small number may not be, and it's those people that we'd like to know about, then we can have a conversation with them.
For clarity, if people have a batch and that batch is within the super city limits but is not their primary residence, are they allowed to trot across town or up the way, 100 k's to that second house?
Look, I think let's just perhaps not get too focused on Waiheke Island as such, but within Alert Level 3, which Waiheke is obviously part of, people can move around within Alert Level 3 so long as they abide by the expectations, which is social distancing, staying within their bubble, not having a gathering of more than 10 people. That's pretty basic stuff. So, and of course, our request is that they spend as much time as they can as their place of usual residence, which is the right thing to do. But
their primary home.
Nothing stopping someone.
Yeah, their primary home, according to the rules that are posted online, sorry to interrupt, but it says you can only travel in the Auckland region to return to your primary home. So this is not a question about Waiheke, this is a question about people going to second homes in batches, because Waiheke is not the only issue. There's obviously Pakari, Omaha, Matakana. How do you check out your checkpoints whether people are taking the mickey here?
Well, obviously that's a very big challenge for us. Putting a border in the northern and southern end of our country's biggest city is no small task, and that is quite simply why the government, police and health have said loud and clear since the beginning of this year just how important it is for everybody to understand what's expected of them and for each and every one of us to do the right thing. That's how we'll get the result we all need quicker. So
what proof are you asking them when you stop them?
Well, so in terms of the checkpoints north and south of Auckland, obviously essential workers who are going from one place to another for essential work are required to produce some documentation. Now, that can be a number of things. For instance, health workers, their ID badge, their photo ID badge, other critical goods and services. But if there's any doubt as to what those essential services are, I'd encourage people to have a look at the government COVID website because it's very clear who that applies to. And one of the reasons we're experiencing, significant delays is because there are people trying to find their way across Auckland, into or out of Auckland, who actually don't meet those criteria. That's slowing down everybody, particularly those who need to get somewhere and they're able to move.
Do you ask people to produce a letter or a bill with their primary residence on it?
Yes, we do. Our request is that they produce some information that demonstrates to us that they are an essential worker and that they are moving for an essential reason. Now, I appreciate that with the volume of traffic that's moving north and south, that's a big ask. But the risk is if they don't have it,
sorry to interrupt, but if they don't have it, do you then automatically turn them around? No evidence, no go?
Yes, that has happened because...
But does it happen every time?
Look, I think that depends. My police colleagues are taking a very practical approach at the checkpoints as best as they can. And we appreciate with the volume of traffic moving through that there are times when some people may not have the documentation required, and we will do everything that we can in the time that we have, which is not a lot, to help understand their situation. And from time to time that does mean that we've needed to let some people through because they've been able to satisfy us of the reason for their travel. But please, we've got to make sure that anyone moving is planning, that they are taking with them documentation that is able to demonstrate the police who they are, why they're moving, and that it fits within the criteria.
Because I've looked at your latest numbers, right? So 50,468 stops, 676 turned around. That means 49,792 passed through the checkpoints. Were they all really essential workers and people with legitimate reasons? Because that seems quite porous, the border.
Yes, Lisa. Look, those figures are up until 4 o'clock on Saturday. Yesterday, thousands of vehicles were turned around. We believe that now with the amount of messaging that is out there for people to understand and help them understand that our tolerance of people's, in some cases, excuses as to why they should travel is obviously lower, and we need to make some decisions and turn people around. My advice is planning and documentation will help them get to where they need to if in fact they meet.
So there's a lag with those figures. The next load of figures is going to show that you've turned around way more people. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, it will. Okay. Yes, tomorrow morning that will be the case.
You would have seen the pictures of everyone enjoying the sun, going to a bunch of Auckland beaches, people mixing, using playgrounds that are supposed to be closed and sports fields, and having a good social time out in the sun. I know you're trying education, but do you think it's time to go with the fines now?
Well, look, we have issued warnings. We're getting fantastic support from the community in terms of people calling in and saying they're concerned about something that they've seen, so we are following those up.
But people are still doing it. Did you see those pictures on the weekend, Richard? They're still doing it.
Yes, I did.
So your commissioner has told us that already in legislation is the power for the police to give instant fines. So is it time to start using that?
Look, that's a bigger discussion than the one that we're having now, but we are discussing those very points with health and with all of government group that's in place. So there may well come a time when we need to take that approach. But for the best part now, the engagement that we've had with the public and the encouragement and education in the vast majority of cases, that's sufficient for people to help better understand what's expected, and it's only a very, very small number that we're having to warn.
I see you're beefing up the number of checkpoints, right? So you're up to about 13 now. Are people getting a little bit tricky? Were they skirting around the edges, going through other roads, getting through?
Yes, we did find that. Lisa, over the weekend, sadly, there's a couple of small back routes in and out of Auckland, and we have now put checkpoints continuously 24/7 on all those locations.
Appreciate your time this evening. That is the Assistant Police Commissioner Richard Chambers there.